use your resources. We don't need to know everything. Here's what was going on last week is we were trying to solve a problem internally at work, and I didn't have a solution. And you don't need to know everything. And I just reached out to my network and said, here's my problem. Help me. I raised the white flag and I said, help me. And I got the best solution ever. We don't need to dive into what that was. It was just a simple work problem. But you know what? You don't need to know everything. And everyone has so many friends and people in their network. It's okay to ask for help.
Welcome to the Family Legacy Podcast, a podcast that goes beyond legal jargon and gets to the root of how to ensure your past, present, and future are protected. This episode is brought to you by the Rutkowski Law Firm, Michigan's leading asset protection, estate planning, Medicaid, and elder law firm. And here's our host, Michael Rutkowski. Michael, happy Tuesday.
Yeah, happy Tuesday. Here we are again. Love it.
Here we are again. How was your weekend?
It was good. You know what this podcast makes me realize is that I do some really cool stuff. So this weekend, and I guess I should realize this better, but having to reflect on the week. So last weekend, I learned how to scuba dive. I got certified, not the open, I haven't done the open water part for those who know what I'm talking about, but I did all the book work and the pool work. And here's why. I'm part of a group called EO, Entrepreneur Organization. And in that, you have what's called a forum, a smaller subset of members that you meet with monthly, and then annually you do a retreat. And so each person plans the retreat. We rotate year by year. And the guy that's planning the retreat this year is super into scuba diving. So this group kind of pushes you outside of your normal limits to try new things. And I am hooked. It was the coolest thing I've ever done. One, it's just cool to learn something new at an older age, but I think I'm a scuba diver. I mean, I haven't done it yet, but I think I'm a scuba diver. Just call me Scuba Steve.
Scuba Michael. That is awesome. So did you do this on the forum, or you're getting ready to go to the forum retreat?
Yeah,
and
so
so
we don't go down to Mexico to actually go into open water scuba diving until January, but we have to get half of the stuff done here. So we've got the book work done. We did all the pool stuff. We learned about regulators and BCs and all the other, everyone who knows what I'm talking about knows what I'm talking about. But it was very cool. It was so cool. I could swim around in a pool for days. And the funny thing is the first exercise we had to do was go underwater and breathe for 60 seconds with no mask on. So your eyes are closed and you're just focused on breathing. And I'm like, I don't know that I can do this for more than 60 seconds. But then by the end of the weekend, I could stay underwater now for 5 hours. I mean, if you could, I could do it. It's so meditative and just awesome. And while you're doing it, there's nothing you can think about but what you're doing, which is so cool. So you just turn off all the noise that we're always hearing and thinking about. It's so good. You're going to get more updates on this as I just get deeper and deeper into scuba diving.
Oh, I can't wait. So just to be clear, this is the real deal where you got the oxygen tank on and you're fully
tank,
submerged.
Fully submerged, aqua tanks on, the whole thing. Yep.
Flippers.
Yes. Fins. Yes, for sure.
Nice.
And apparently there's lingo that you got to use, it's called air and some other things. And if you're not using that lingo, people know you're total amateur.
Not real. Like
flippers.
Yeah. Like flippers. No, you got your fins, you got your air. That is awesome. I can't wait for the next update. And January, Costa Rica.
Yeah, we're gonna send pictures. Yeah, there'll be pictures. Please. For sure.
Oh, yeah. We better see some
pictures, videos, all the good stuff.
Well, we'll keep you all updated on that. More to come. This week, we want to talk about irrevocable trusts.
Yeah, you got it.
I did it.
It's here's the deal: is it scares people. It scares people to even say the word because there's so many different pronunciations. You could say irrevocable, irrevocable, and we've just been taught. Anyone's first introduction to an irrevocable trust is scary because all we see on Google and everywhere is that yeah, you can create this trust that you can put your stuff in, but you're never going to be able to touch it again. That's everyone's kind of like baseline understanding of what an irrevocable trust is, and that's so far from the truth.
Okay, so break it down well, let's talk about all the different types of trusts
Yeah.
first. And then we'll spend most of our time on this one to sort of bust the myths. But
Yeah.
talk us through the
Yeah.
different
Sure.
options.
Let's do that. And we ain't got time for that because there's like 60 trusts. But let's talk
Oh,
about there's in categories, there's revocable trusts and irrevocable trusts. Most people are starting with revocable trusts. Like, here's some statistics for you. Half of people have no estate plan in place. So, okay, take those people out of it. Of those that have an estate plan, probably 95% are revocable living trusts. Main purpose of a revocable living trust, avoid the probate court and make it as simple as possible for your kids or whoever's going to inherit this to just make it a real smooth transition. That is really the main goal of a revocable living trust. You're at the grocery store talking to someone about trusts, it's probably a revocable living trust. Then there's irrevocable trusts, and there is such a wide variety of irrevocable trusts. And I'd say it starts with a very light version that you can still be the trustee of, you can make changes to, you can access the assets. There's just some limitations in there about the revocability, meaning can you just like blow the thing up and throw it out? Like that's what it means. Can you revoke it? Can you just like get rid of it? And then everything to like the one that we're all so familiar and scared of, which is like the tax planning irrevocable trust, where you need a third party trustee. You're going to put money in there and you're never going to touch it again. And what I mean by third party trustee is just someone else. Someone else has to manage the trust, whether that's a corporate trustee like a bank, a fiduciary, or just someone, not related to you, whatever. You just have to have someone else other than you being the trustee controlling the trust, and then you can't have access to the assets. Why someone would do that is if they're over the estate tax threshold, meaning if they were to pass away, there would be tax owed, inheritance tax owed to pass it to the next generation. That's why someone would do this. And so you can earmark some money, put it in this irrevocable trust, and it's going to pass to the next generation without that tax. And that tax can be a lot. It could be 40%. So, but here's the kicker with that trust. Right now, as we sit here in 2024, the estate tax is at around 25 million for a joint couple and about 12 million for an individual. So there's just not a lot of people that need this type of complex planning, but it's the one we're all so familiar with, so we're scared of it. But that being said, there's all kinds of other reasons we'd use an irrevocable trust. We'd use it to plan for Medicaid so that we can use Medicaid for long-term care costs, so that we don't have to pay $10,000 to $15,000 a month if someone in our family needs skilled care. We might use it for a special needs trust. What that means is, let's say someone's on governmental benefits because they were injured or they just their income and assets are such that they qualify for a Medicaid health insurance type benefit. If they receive an inheritance from like a lawsuit, a car accident, something like that, it can disqualify them from their benefits. So something like a special needs trust is a version of an irrevocable trust that can hold those assets and still allow you to gain governmental benefits. Yeah, go ahead.
What happens to those assets though? So like if you get injured and you want to put that into an irrevocable trust,
Yeah.
then and it's under someone else's your trustee.
Yeah.
Let's say you get better, or what do you, if you can't touch that money,
Yeah.
then like what
No.
happens to it?
So in a special needs or supplemental needs trust, kind of interchangeable terms, you can touch those assets, but they have to be given to you by a third party trustee. So like you could be my third party trustee. I'm on government benefits. I get in a car accident. I win a judgment because I was in a car accident. I put that money in a special needs trust. You're my trustee, and I can get those assets for things like, everyday living expenses, like an apartment or transportation. There's usually a list of things that you're allowed to use the money for. So you use the trust money for all these things over here, and then you use your other money for the stuff that is not allowed through a special needs trust.
I think that's why we all get so scared when we start talking about this one, because it feels like once it's gone. But I think what we're really breaking down here is when you can put a trustee in place, especially somebody that you trust,
There you go.
then
I caught
then you can
Yeah.
facilitate the funds in a way that makes sense for your current living situation, it sounds
Yeah.
like. So
Yeah, and there has been a lot of law changes in the past, call it 20 years, that make it less scary too. And what I mean by that is there's statutes now, at least in Michigan, that I'm aware of, that allow us to break irrevocable trusts. You know, we can, if it doesn't make sense to have this trust anymore, we can go to the court system and break the trust. A lot of times, with consent of all the beneficiaries, you can break the trust or modify the trust. I'm actually meeting with a family tomorrow afternoon that we're doing that same thing. They set up a charitable remainder trust, and we're changing who the charity is. And so, as long as we get consent by some of the interested parties, we can make those changes. So it's not as scary as it used to be, even close. Like, there are ways to make changes. You're not locked in on these things forever.
got it. I cut you off there, but what are some other reasons why you would want the irrevocable trust versus the revocable one?
Yeah. The biggest ones are the long-term care protection, so that in the event you need long-term care, you don't have to pay for that. It can be covered by Medicaid or VA aid and attendance if you're a vet. So that can be great. The special needs stuff I talked about, lawsuit protection. So that's always great. You know, any asset held by an asset protection trust is kind of off the table if you were ever sued. That's a big one. Creditors, bankruptcy, those are some big ones. And then tax planning has all kinds of different irrevocables trusts. I mean, it's like alphabet soup, no joke. Like when they teach it to lawyers, they call this section the alphabet soup of trusts, because there's like cruts and crats and slats and all these things. They all mean things, obviously, but it's just different mechanisms that we can use to shelter from taxes.
So in terms of now we have what all the different trusts are in terms of irrevocable or revocable. And then we have all the different reasons why you might need irrevocable versus revocable. Let's talk about the myths. You mentioned a couple of them in terms of like why the biggest one I think we mentioned in terms of why this is so scary, of feeling like you can never touch your assets. In terms of conversations you've had with potential clients or even current clients, what are some questions that come up for them in terms of like why they might be hesitant? Is that the main one, or are there some other
Yeah,
concerns?
the main ones are the things that you find when you start going down the rabbit hole on Google, honestly. The fears are you need someone else to control the assets, and you're not going to be able to ever touch them again. Those are the two main fears. You know, we'll walk through with clients all the different options, and we talk to them about, you know, the various degrees of irrevocable trust, and that you can still be the trustee and all these things. And there's probably a 50% chance that we're going to get an email about, I could almost call this anywhere between 3 and 7 days later with those exact questions, because usually everyone's so aware of the revocable living trust. They meet with us and we just educate them about all their options. And they're like, why wouldn't someone do that type of trust? That makes total sense. Then they go do some research. Then they're like, yep, let's do that. As they're moving through our process, they do a little research, they come back to us, and we just have to go over that one more time. That, you know, if we're doing Medicaid pre-planning, you can still be the trustee, you still have control of the assets, we just need to teach you how to do that. It's really a beautiful tool. We just have to get people comfortable with how it's the mechanics of it, the logistics of how it works.
Let's talk about that. It's leading perfectly into my next question in terms of how the logistics work in the process. So, how would somebody go about setting up a irrevocable
Yeah.
trust?
Yeah, a great question. And what I mean by logistics is how are they going to access their assets? So let's talk about that here just in a
Okay.
second.
Mhm.
You know, as far as setting it up, it's a typical process of meet with us just to learn about your goals, or any attorney that you're meeting with. then they're going to probably have another meeting where they design out the plan. They're going to talk about everything from who do you want as the successor trustee? Who are your beneficiaries? In the event that your beneficiaries predecease you, who do you want that share to go to? And they're going to walk through lots of different things. And it's a lot more conversational than people think. A lot of people are a little apprehensive about like, what do I need to prepare for the meeting and all this? And it's just basically, who are the people that you trust to be your successor trustee, just like you mentioned, and then that you can count on. Let's say that you can count on them if something happens to you, and then your beneficiaries. But as far as like the logistics of it, and it all depends on the type of trust we're doing. But let's cover the Medicaid Asset Protection Trust today. So if we're setting that up for long-term care benefits, that's probably one of the most flexible, irrevocable trusts that we do. If the main goal is to get someone qualified for the Medicaid long-term care benefit or VA aid and attendance, because they can still be the trustee and they can still gain access to the assets. But it's not direct access. It's not as simple as walking up to the bank and making a withdrawal. Like no one's going to like that because you're not following the rules of the trust. Now, in reality, you could probably do that because banks are not governing this as much as you like. So we need to make sure that we're following the rules so that the day we need Medicaid, we can show them we followed the rules. So a couple ways to gain access to assets that are in this irrevocable Medicaid Asset Protection Trust is a couple different ways. You can do it through any consent of a beneficiary. So let's just say it's you and a spouse who set up this trust and you have your kids named as beneficiaries. If any of your kids say, sure, it's okay for you to withdraw money, you can do that. That's one way to do it. And so one way that we structure that is if you just set up a joint account with one of your beneficiaries, we kind of call that a flow-through account where, or a key holder account, we call it, where you just move money from the protected, let's say there's a brokerage account and you want to pull out, $20,000 to put a new roof on your house. You take the 20,000, you put it in that joint account that has one of your beneficiaries' names on it, and then you do what you want with it. So you just got to follow the plan essentially and make sure you're following the rules of the trust. But when we go to apply for the Medicaid long-term care benefit, this is not a hide the ball strategy. We provide them a copy of the trust, all the transactions for the previous 5 years, and as long as we follow their rules, you qualify.
Yep, that does make sense. I imagine everything needs to be written. Like you can't just call up your son or daughter and be like, "Oh, hey, I just want to take some money out of the account today. Is that cool?" I imagine there needs to be a
you
bit of a paper trail.
gotta have the paper trail. But what's so nice today with banking, there's paper trails on everything, so it's pretty straightforward. But same thing with that trust, like even with that Medicaid Asset Protection Trust, you can actually revoke it with consent of all of your beneficiaries. If for some reason you wanted to get rid of that trust and get a new trust because laws changed or something, as long as all your kids sign off on it, you're good to go.
Okay, for the last question here, because I can't believe it. We're almost out of time. It just flies by. It just flies by. Um, what if you want to change the beneficiary? Let's say you
Yeah.
put somebody that you thought you trusted in place and things like you just
You,
mentioned, things
yeah,
change. So
you
what
still
happens?
you still have complete control over who are the trustees and successor trustees and who are the beneficiaries. You can make those changes anytime, just like a revocable living trust. Call our office, tell us who you want it to be, sign the paperwork, and you're done.
It doesn't seem like there's that much of a difference between the two in terms of
No,
process and logistics.
the Medicaid one is so similar. It's so similar. That's why I always say it's like the lightest version of an irrevocable trust possible. It's so close to a revocable.
All right, one more question because I can't help myself. Medicaid makes a lot of sense, and we talked about long-term healthcare costs. Is there any other reason, if you're and it sounds like those are the two main reasons, and the third being the tax situation. If you're making over 12 million or 25 million as a family, then from a tax situation, you would want to do this to keep your taxes down. Are those the three main reasons?
Lawsuit protection. Lawsuit protection is that other one that it's usually and I would have to say like asset classes like when The best time to do a Medicaid asset protection trust is when there's a high likelihood if you need long-term care, you're going to need Medicaid at some point. So let's just call it assets. To use round numbers, from 0 to 1 million, it's great to use the Medicaid asset protection trust. People with assets of 1 million and above, their concerns change. They can easily private pay for care, but now they're more like lawsuit asset protection because they're kind of a target. And maybe that'd be something great to talk about next time, is the lawsuit asset protection piece.
All right, well, stay tuned on that. Before we go, Michael, what are you most looking forward to? We got 7 days here between shows. What do you got
Oh,
going on? What are you looking forward
this
to?
is easy. This is easy. So my wife's going away to Nashville this weekend. So if you've seen this weekend's like a yes weekend for my kids. So we just do all the things. Mom's gone. They're gonna stay in pajamas all day. We're gonna go get our nails done. I do, girl dad stuff all the time, but it's gonna be incredible.
Oh my gosh. Oh, well, I can't wait to follow up with you on Tuesday
Yeah.
here about how Yes Weekend went.
Very good nails.
I expect rainbow colors here.
Yeah, no
Rainbow.
paint, no paint, no paint. But I love when they massage the feet and stuff. It's real good.
Oh, it is pretty
I've only
cool.
actually done it one other time, but I was like, why haven't I been doing this my whole life?
You're missing out. Well, welcome
I
to the
know.
show. It's awesome. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. If you liked this episode, please like, subscribe, and share. This episode was brought to you by the Rutkowski Law Firm, the Michigan's leading asset protection, estate planning, Medicaid, and elder care law firm. And if you'd like help with your estate planning and asset protection or to set up a trust, please call 248-955-2842. Again, that is 248-955-2842. Thank you again, Michael. See you next week.
My pleasure. See you next week.